Want to make 7 figures as a real estate agent? I thought so. Whether you're brand new to the industry, you've been at it for a while, if you want to level up your business, this video is for you. My business partner is going to come on and explain exactly how he got to the point of 7 figures in year 2 and on as a real estate agent. Welcome back to my channel. It's Charlie Cameron with eXp Realty, and I am on a mission to help real estate agents everywhere grow their business and achieve financial freedom along the way. One of the ways I do that is by holding a Tuesday growth mastermind for my free global team. This is a recording from my mastermind where I brought on a guest speaker, my friend, longtime mentor, longtime partner, and a coach to our global team, Matt Gardner, who is a 7-figure-a-year real estate earner from his 2nd year in real estate. The man is on fire, crushes it, and he coaches our whole team to do the same thing, and we love him for that. And this is him sharing really everything he's learned over the past few years of getting to that point and what he really thought it took to get there. So this isn't all about crunching numbers and how to generate all the leads, and though I do teach a lot of lead attraction for our team, this is more about the mindset, the motivation, and the power, and how to get that power and achieve 7 figures in commission every single year as a real estate agent. So this is going to be a very interesting one. I think you'll really love it and you'll really be engaged by it. And if you are interested in joining a awesome partnership team, eXp Realty, where we do things like this, be sure to check out the link below. We'd be happy to schedule a call and see if it's a good fit for you. Let's get into it. My good friend, longtime mentor, and my team leader, who also helped me launch a team. That's how good of a dude he is. Former F-35 instructor turned full-time real estate agent, became a 7-figure agent in his 2nd year at eXp. I met him kind of at the end of his 1st year-ish at an investor meetup, joined his team, joined eXp with him. So Matt is in your sponsor upline here, and he's a 7-figure-a-year agent. And it's just kind of been amazing to watch his story as he was kind of forced out of the military and an early retirement there and had to pivot into real estate. And boy, did he pivot, right? And so, I mean, I love your story, Matt. It's awesome to be a partner with you. And I look forward to hearing what you have to say about how you did what you did becoming a 7.
All right, let's jump into it. You guys already did the intro. This is me. This is who I was in my previous life. Fighter pilot, always had a good time there. This is my family who kind of transitioned and focusing much more time and energy on them, my wife and 4 awesome kids. And, you know, this is when I was living my life on top of the world. Flying in the military for 11 years. I had 5 years flying the F-15, had an awesome time going downrange with that. And I was an instructor in the F-35, newest stealth fighter jet we had in the military. And you find yourself on top of the world at certain moments in your life, right? But there are times when the world kind of comes tumbling down. And that's what happened to me here, where literally about to go to Top Gun in the Air Force. We call it weapons school in the Air Force. And kind of at the best of the best when it comes to fighter pilots, and like just got accepted this program and couldn't be any happier, super stoked. And then I go out to Vegas and I start to feel a little bit weird, a little bit extra tired, kind of getting out of breath randomly. I go to get a scan of my chest, and all of a sudden, everything you see here in pink, these are all tumors. I had 9 large tumors in my chest and plenty of other little small tumors all around. Completely unexpected. One of them, this little sucker right here, that was the size of a softball between my heart and my spine. So it's called a bulky tumor is what they called it. And so I had what are called Hodgkin lymphoma. It's a type of blood cancer, so you can't just go in and cut it out. That's when we started chemo, and that's me in full chemo mode, losing all the hair and doing the whole chemo dance there. And so it's crazy when life throws curveballs at you. You need to learn to pivot, right? You need to learn to be like stay on your toes and pivot to something else. You can't just You can choose to take the victim mentality, or you can take the David Goggins, or not David Goggins, the Jocko Willink extreme kind of ownership mentality, where you just kind of own the situation, you move on, and you move from there. I can piss and moan about how hot the weather is outside, but I can't affect it, right? I can piss and moan about the fact that I had cancer, but I couldn't affect it beyond, trying to be healthy and trying to move on with my life from there. So my pivot was to go to investing, right? So investing in sales in real estate. Basically, while I was down in chemo at the hospital, one of my good friends, who was another pilot friend of mine, he came in, he gave me Rich Dad Poor Dad, which is like what they call the purple Bible in the real estate world, right? I mean, it's just a very common book to have people change their mentality and understanding. And then I also got hooked on Bigger Pockets and just I had a previous little bit of a sales background. And so it was just a really smooth transition from studying 12 hours a day in a vault, studying tactics about Chinese and Russian fighter pilots, to now I was in a hospital for 10 to 12 hours a day and studying tactics in real estate. And that was kind of the big pivot moment. So I started investing, and I started jumping into sales at the same time. So investing, I just started jumping into flips. Here's my second flip that I did here. It was a turd of a house, turned it into a beautiful house, and learned a lot of lessons. Jumped into some short-term rentals. This is my first short-term rental we bought, and using partnerships, and bought my first short-term rental there. Eventually, I sold my short-term rental to buy an RV park. That RV park was a mobile home park that we actually transitioned to be an RV park. So we jumped in the mobile home park world as well. And then eventually we started getting into the larger and medium and large size multifamilies, where we're buying, this is a 148 unit complex we bought, or this is another 88 unit complex we bought. This one's up in Montgomery, and this one's over in Mobile. And so that was the kind of transition, starting small and eventually building up with my confidence and my experience. And at the same time, I was working sales. And the nice thing about being sales as an agent, I intentionally focused my efforts as an agent to be an investor agent, right? What they call the unicorn agent, the agent that actually understands investing, versus just sending, some sort of roach or, MLS dripped campaign of just a search to my clients saying, oh, here's a deal. And it's just a new house in the market that's not actually a deal. I think investors kind of see through that. And so I could speak the language as an investor. And then I also, started to invest in myself, and what it becomes is almost becomes, the self-licking ice cream cone. You could have your cake and you can eat it too as an investor and as an agent. It just becomes this source of leads, where investors will bring you leads that you can tackle, or bring you leads that you can sell, or you find a lead that maybe you're just not able to tackle right now, so you can then sell it. And it just becomes this nice, ecosystem feeding on itself. The sales were able to excel from there. So my first full year as a full-time agent, once I finally left the military, because they decided to kick me out due to the complications of cancer, I was able to sell 50 million that first year and 50 million the next year in sales, which was, I didn't realize at the time, it was just me just grinding. You don't realize until you start to take a look around me with the agents in the area who I really looked up to. And I realized they were only selling 15 million or 20 million a year. And I was like, oh, geez, I did 3 times more than these guys. Crap, this is cool. It's a pretty cool position to be in. So this is kind of the flow. It's a 10-step flow that I broke down in my book of the kind of the flow from start to finish. It really starts with building the foundation, where we start, and then how we can kind of build that empire on top of the foundation for your career as in sales and investing. And really, like I said, they go hand in hand, with ultimately the goal for all of us, hopefully, to be in a position where you don't need to sell anymore. But if you want to sell, continue to sell. I'm still selling right now because I still really enjoy it. At the same time, it also helps accelerate my investments, right? The more money I make in sales, the more I can invest, and just kind of helps me snowball that. But ultimately, this is kind of the foundational point here. So the first point you really need to understand is your mindset is everything. And I've had a lot of people, Charlie being one of them, come through my personal production team. And you can see from the beginning, there are some people who just don't have that right mindset, and it comes crumbling down pretty quickly. I like David Goggins' mindset of, he says, what do you say? Motivation is shit, is what he says. It's great. It gives you a short-term boost when you watch that 5-minute video in the morning. And I love it where you kind of get pumped up. You're like, oh man, I'm going to take on the day. Let's go. And all of a sudden come the 1 o'clock feeling. You're like, I'm tired, man. I'm beat down. I did the stuff Charlie told me to do, and where's my sales? I got nothing, and so you need to have this foundational mindset first. And how do you really build that mindset? For me, it came through exposure, the exposure to realizing there are other mindsets out there. There's other ways to think that kind of help change your mind. I mean, one of the first books that I read as I was struggling initially with cancer, it was called The Book of Joy. And this is just one example of mindset. This is the Dalai Lama and Reverend Desmond Tutu. It has nothing to do with real estate at all, but it's just a book to understand how to be happier in life, how to experience joy more in life, right? And that was kind of a mindset shift, an intentional mindset shift that I was able to do because I started to expose myself to these different mindsets out there. And there's a ton of mindset books. We can talk in hours on that topic alone about exposing yourself to different mindsets. There's other ones you can think of, one of the books that I really like is called The Secret. If you've not read The Secret, it's I love it, but I hate it. There's a lot of precepts and concepts in there that I don't agree with. I'll be honest, or I don't agree with them at all. Like the book goes a little bit too far to the extreme, right? If you haven't read the book, near the end, they're like, if you believe it hard enough and you're 5'5" and you just really think you want to be 6'2", you can do it. And you're like, okay, like there's some physical limitations here, guys, but there are. I think the core concept of the book of the power of mindset is really true. So anyways, just getting yourself out there, opening yourself to and exposing yourself to these different outlets. And then from there, it's acceptance, right? You need to, one of the books that I really loved that I read was, it was called Unfuck Yourself. It's by, what's his name? I can't remember his name off the top of my head. Anyways, it's a good book. And
Vaynerchuk? Or
what is it?
The same as Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck?
Yeah. What's his name?
Mark Manson. I love that book.
Oh, actually, no, it's not Mark Manson. That's not the name.
Oh,
Tom,
okay.
what did you say?
Oh, okay.
It's not Gary Vaynerchuk?
No, it's not Gary V. I'll look it up anyways. It's a good book. He has a couple books that they all have some sort of F word dropped in them. But it's one of his
Gary Bishop.
Gary Bishop, yeah, thank you, Gary John Bishop. That's it. One of his concepts in that book is it's accept everything and expect nothing is his concept. And the concept when it comes to real estate, the way I kind of relate that of accepting everything and expecting nothing is if you're in a deal. Let's say if you expect the title office, the title agent to do their job, and you don't accept the fact that you need to like back them up. So you're expecting to do something and you're not accepting the fact that you need to back them up. You're setting yourself up for failure, right? Like that you need to be in a position where I'm not expecting this person necessarily to do their job, so I'm gonna be there to back them up. So it's a form of ownership, which we kind of transition to next. But it really does. It puts you in a mindset to where you don't get nearly as you don't ride that emotional roller coaster as much, right? So realizing that acceptance and expectation are really what leads to unhappy feelings for the most part, right? So if I expect Sam today to reach out and slap me in the face because I did something wrong, and Sam's like, hey dude, you did something wrong, I'm gonna come over here and slap you in the face because of that. I'm not gonna be nearly as pissed off if I'm like, dude, yeah, I expect this to happen, versus if it's just out of the blue, Sam and I are talking, and he just slaps me in the face, I'll be like, dude, what the hell's going on? That expectation means everything. And the same thing when you're talking to your buyers, when you're talking to sellers, expectation means everything. If you say, hey guys, this is how it normally works when we have inspections, don't be surprised when you have a 30-page inspection report that's going to come from the inspector, especially for like a first-time buyer. And you tell them to expect a 30-page inspection report, and then the inspection report only ends up being 25 pages with a list of items. They're like, oh, well, this is better than I expected. Versus if you don't set them up for that expectation and they don't know what to expect, and all of a sudden they see a 25-page inspection report, they're like, Charlie, I don't know if I want this house anymore, man. Look at all these issues. And so setting that expectation is really huge for your buyers and sellers, as well as for you as an agent. So kind of building it up. Faster, funnier though, so we can get through all 10 steps. Ownership's obviously a big aspect of mindset. I'm a huge proponent of ownership. Not a fan of the victim mentality versus the ownership mentality. Again, we could talk on this for a while, but this really comes down to the concept of taking ownership, even in situations where you're not the root cause of the problem, right? So if a deal falls apart because a survey was delayed, and which then made the seller not want to delay because he had another buyer, so the seller cancels the deal because the survey was delayed, right? You could easily say, man, title company didn't order the survey in time, right? You could totally pin the blame on someone else, but you could also always look inward and be like, man, what could I have done better in this situation to prevent this from happening, right? So the moment you kind of put in your mindset this concept of ownership in every situation, or even it's like, man, I was 15 minutes late to my appointment today, but traffic was unexpected, there was an accident in the way, like, well, I didn't cause the accident, right? And a victim mentality, be like, dude, I'm so sorry. There was an accident in the way, and there was nothing I could have done. Where in an ownership mentality, I could be like, you know what? Maybe I could just plan on being 15 minutes early to all my appointments from now on. And I'd rather sit there 15 minutes early in the parking lot and get work done on my phone rather than stressing to get there right on time. So it's that whole concept of like truly any situation, taking ownership and figuring out how you can make it better in the future. All right, and the last concept of mindset that I'll throw out there is I love the concept of neuroplasticity. If you guys aren't familiar with it, but it's basically the concept you can effectively physically rewire your brain by thinking about things enough is the short way to say it. The way I always relate this one is if I were to say to everyone in this room, what is 7 times 7? All of you probably right in your mind thought 49, right? And because the reason 7 times 7 is 49 is because it was neuroplasticity took effect when you were in second, third, and fourth grade when you had to memorize those damn multiplication tables, right? Because that's what they did. In math, they forced these numbers in your head where 8 times 8, 64. I know 9 times 9 is 81. I know what these numbers are, because literally we have wires in our brain that have kind of physically molded to know these connections. And you can do the same thing when it comes to mindset. So if you feel like you're struggling with one thing because you have a certain habit or a certain concept you're struggling to understand, just realize you can physically rewire your brain. So you can alter the way you think. I'll leave it at that just for the sake of time. So that's the mindset piece. Like I said, that's the foundation of building where we are here. You have to focus on building that foundation, because everything else is built in that mindset. If you don't have the proper mindset, I guarantee you it'll collapse. You can build up a little bit on some sand, a foundation of sand, but you're not going to be able to build the empire that you're looking for, guys. So the next step is going to be education, right? So now that we have this broad foundation of mindset, you really can't start to build the frame of a house without actually understanding the education behind it. So this is really just comes down to filling your mind with the items you need to be good at your craft, whether it be real estate sales, real estate investing, real estate knowledge, real estate, negotiations, when it happens to lead generation, marketing, branding, a lot of the stuff that Charlie touches on. There's so many aspects to this career, to this industry. You need to start to learn the lingo, like I said. So that starts with education. That's reading the books and listening to the podcast and going to the classes, going to the events. For those of you who aren't going to EXPCon, man, I tell you, I want to encourage you as much as you can to get out there. These large events, if you've not been to a large civilian event like this, they are transformational for me. Even having gone, they get a bit repetitive after you go to a few, don't get me wrong, but they're still transformational when I go. My transformation has just shifted, where even if I've heard, Krista Mayshore talk about how YouTube has can drastically change your life. I've heard her speech like 4 times. Maybe I'm not focusing on her speech anymore because I can almost recite it, but now I'm focusing on the networking that happens at these events when you're belly to belly with some other, high network sales individuals. So exposing yourself and educating yourself intentionally through these different outlets is huge. And then from there, as you build this foundation of education, you need to get in the habit of exploration, like being inquisitive about a topic. That's like one of my posts I put out recently was about an imputed interest rate. And I was just curious because I heard someone say something about, oh, to watch out, you're going to get taxed if you don't charge enough interest rate. And I was like, what the hell? And so I went on this little rabbit hole of a journey to understand like what that even meant, right? I was exploring the space to understand, one little comment that I heard because it kind of piqued my interest. And so try to get in the habit of, like, if you're curious, I know Charlie does a good job of this. Anytime he's interested, like he dives feet first into some topic. And I'm like, dude, how'd you make this website? Oh, I just spent all night programming it or something. I'm like, dude, that's really cool, because he'll just totally explore and dive and immerse himself into it. And that's really the last part is learn to immerse yourself. Like if you want to learn a language, whether it be the language of real estate, or we'll say you want to learn Russian, the best way to learn that language after you have the foundational structure of the language through the basic education exploration, the best way to get fluent in that language is completely immerse yourself in that language, right? To go to Russia, go to St. Petersburg, go to Moscow, well, when we're allowed, I don't even know if it's allowed right now, but, go to the country where people are speaking the language to fully immerse yourself. And immersion in the real estate language is the same thing. Like, I intentionally not just try to fill my time with real estate stuff. I'll actually, on the same time, I'll cut out everything else that is not real estate. That, to me, that is immersion. Like getting rid of the things that are music. Yeah, sure. I've listened to, T Swift, little T Swizzy plenty of times. I can still recite her songs because my kids listen to her enough. Like I don't need to be listening to her while I'm driving right now, right? I can just then immerse myself in podcasts or audiobooks or whatever happens to be while I'm driving. So I'm cutting out everything else that I can so I can immerse myself in the language of real estate. So that's my whole concept of learning the lingo. All right, networking. Man, I'm going way over time. I'm not going to go over time. I'm going to go faster. Here we go. Networking. So networking's next. So now that you've kind of built that foundation of the mindset, you have the educational framework. Now we're going to kind of build the roof on the house here as you start to build the empire. And that's the next step is really networking. So you have the education now. You have the mindset. It's like, now I need to go do stuff. What am I going to go do? The next thing is really networking. And so just quickly here, you want to focus on, your concept of branding and social media. So realize there's there's virtual networking and then there's physical networking. And I recommend leveraging both aspects of it, going to the meetups locally, attending the various real estate association events locally, getting involved locally, whether it happens to be with your local chamber of commerce, your business connection. There's a bunch of business groups out there as well, or just real estate associations, whatever it happens to be. Get involved physically, and then also get involved virtually. Like this world that we live in is this amalgamation of both physical and virtual connections. So just spreading yourself out there as much as you can, and so just networking. I'll leave it at that for the sake of time. But the thing is, now that you have this mindset and you have the education, you start to talk to people in these networking events. You're like, what do I do though? Or what do I do with these networking events? And my answer to that is adding value. And so as you want to crank up the speed as you're networking these events, it's the whole concept of how do you add value as an investor agent specifically. That's what my focus is. One of my first things was just getting good at what my investors needed was deal analysis. I needed to learn how to analyze a deal so I can actually tell an investor if a deal was good or not before I sent it to them. Just the quick rules of thumb, at least, that I could learn to just send them out there. And one of the benefits of that is you can actually teach as you learn. If you guys, I don't know if you've read or seen the movie Catch Me If You Can, Leonardo DiCaprio's in it, but there's a part in the movie and actually in the real life of the guy who got caught eventually, the con man. He was teaching at, I think it was Brigham Young University. He was teaching a psychology course at BYU. And the coolest part about it was he was actually able to teach a course on a topic he's never learned before. And after he got caught and he's like in prison and they're doing these like interviews, and then one of the questions from the agent was like, man, I understand how you conned everything else. I totally get that. But how did you teach for an entire semester at a university? And how did you like pretend to be a professor? He's like, I'm blown away. How'd you do that? He said, it was easy, man. I just read one chapter ahead. That was it. He just needed to be one chapter ahead of his students to be that much more advanced, right? And so just realize you in the real estate game, as you're learning and you're working with your clients, you're already 1 or 2 or 3 chapters ahead. So don't feel like you need to know the book cover to cover before you start to teach. And so one of the ways to add value as you're networking is just to throw out something you've learned. Or, man, I learned about this. I thought it was really cool. Like, you don't need to be the expert in that specific area, but just to get in the habit of teaching as you learn yourself. It'll really benefit you. The other way to add value as your network is definitely deal flow. I'm not going to get in the weeds here. That's going to come with like lead generation and deal flow. That's an entirely different concept, but deal flow is going to be huge, specifically if you're working with investors. If you're working with more traditional buyers, it's going to be more getting creative and understanding how to use your MLS systems to really maximize your value with your clients out there. So now, as an investor agent, again, this is the whole concept here is focusing as an investor, as an agent. We have the mindset, the education, networking. We're adding value as we're networking. Now you need to understand the whole concept as an agent and as an investor. You need to learn to love people over profits. Like, you need to focus on the relationships and understand why relationships are way more valuable than money is ever going to be. There's a really great video. I'm not going to share it right now, but this is the whole concept of like personal energy, where it comes down to vibrations too. But there's a what is it called? What are the forks, the little tong things that have like this, they vibrate a certain frequency. What are those things called again? Where you like hit them? Dong.
Tuning fork. Excuse me, tuning fork.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, tuning fork. So there's a video of this tuning fork. It's measured with like 240 hertz or whatever. And so the guy hits it, you can see it move, and there's a little ball that's tapping on it because it's tapping at the 240 hertz that it's hitting when it touches the tuning fork. So he stops the tuning fork, it stands still. Then he hits another tuning fork that's tuned to like 220 hertz, and he taps it, and then it does nothing next to the other tuning fork. Nothing happens because they're operating at different frequencies. But then he gets another tuning fork that's set to 240 hertz, the same frequency as the other tuning fork. He hits it, and when these tuning forks are next to each other, even though this one's vibrating, this one starts to vibrate as well. Like, the energy from this one, because they're on the same frequency, starts to vibrate the other one, and then the ball starts to move because they're close to each other, and they're operating on that same frequency. And this is kind of the same concept of when you're dealing with people, if you're able to be on that same frequency with somebody and really focus on the relationship of adding value to their life, and like, I care about Sam as a person, I care about Kobe as a person, as their agent. Like, Kobe, I want you to succeed, whether that means you use me or not as an agent. And so hey, I maybe found a deal that's not in my area. Maybe I'll get a referral out of it. That'd be great. Or maybe not. Maybe I'll just focus on the fact that I think you're a good person and I want to help you as an individual. Hey, I heard you're sick. Let me send you some soup today because, man, I really want to help you out. I'm sorry you're feeling under the weather. Let me Uber eat you some Panera. Like super, like it's little things that make a big difference in relationships. And so if you focus on the relationship, I guarantee you the money will follow. But I also guarantee if you focus on the money, you'll have short-term wins, but you're not going to have long-term gains because it starts to show pretty easily. You can see the agents out there who, you can just see it in their commission splits, in the way they treat you, in the way, like there's some agents out there that are clearly just here for the money, and they're not going to last. I guarantee they won't last. And if they do last, they're not going to be. I don't want to last like that. I don't want to be the I don't want to be the person who everyone, doesn't want to work with because you're just a greedy bastard. And that comes down to reputation. Obviously, the better you're going to build a reputation if you focus on the right things. I'm watching this special right now on Netflix about the Florida Gators from like 05 to 09, which is that's when I went to UF. It was a great time. We won 2 national championships in basketball, 2 in football. But they focus on Tim Tebow. And, whether you love him or hate him as a football player, whether you know who he is, he was like that person who he had the reputation of being a good human being, right? People just liked being around him because he was a genuinely good person. And so that's the reputation that I want to try to build as an investor and as an agent, so people can just come to me and genuinely know that I'm going to try to help them. We'll skip the next couple steps, which really obviously communication is going to be big when you're talking to people and understanding how to communicate properly, and then motivation as well. Like, what is your underlying motivation? Well, we can talk more of that later. Faster, funnier. Here we go. Inner circle growth. So now that you're focusing on the right things, you're adding value, you have people around you. So you have this larger network that you're growing, but now you need to start to figure out like, who are my people? Like, who do I need to start to build into what I call my inner circle? Within my inner circle, in my book, I have it's really 3 concentric circles. When you think of it, the center concentric circle is what I like to call your core 4. And so as an agent, you really need 4 people that you have literally on speed dial. Like when I go to my favorites list on my phone, I have these 4 people on my favorites list ready to dial. And the core 4 are going to be an inspector, a lender, a title officer, and an insurance agent. Those are my core 4. So between the 4 of them, I can answer 90% of my questions that I get. Now, I'm going to leverage those people on, to help me out in every deal. And in a perfect scenario, I'm closing deals using those core 4. Like if I have the same lender, the same title agent, the same inspector, and the same insurance rep on every deal, I guarantee you those deals are going to get smoother and smoother and smoother. And I intentionally try to make this core 4 like a little team, right? I don't make money from their sales. They kind of make money from mine, right? But we really kind of make money together is what it is. So focusing on building that core 4 and having a personal connection with each of those people, it's going to make your life so much easier. Trust me. Like a lot of people think, oh, I got my lender that I love and they're great. But maybe you don't have that title rep that you have a personal connection with because the title agency you use, they only work from 9 to 5 and you don't have any of their cell phones. Like that's in my mind, that's a big no-go. I don't like that because as much as people want to, try to cram real estate into a 9 to 5 job, get that idea out the window. It's not a 9 to 5 job. It's never going to be a 9 to 5 job because most people you're working with have a 9 to 5 job and they're going to want to operate and buy and sell real estate outside of the time that they're working their 9 to 5. All right. So that's your core 4. That's your inner circle. The next layer of my inner circle is what I like to call the supply chain. And so that's working with as many outlets as possible as an investor agent to build and grow my deal flow. So that's going to be, networking with flippers, networking with wholesalers, networking with other investors, making sure it's going to be the other contractors outside of like an inspector. It's going to be maybe a survey company. It's going to be my plumbers, my electricians, my handyman. Like this is my supply chain of people that are going to help me bring deals, but also fix deals as they kind of come. So it's more to your broad network of people. And that supply chain is going to be commonly when people say, hey man, you got a handyman that can help me out for this. I got a bathroom that I'm trying to, redo the floor or something. Oh yeah, I got Tom, dude. He'll be great. Let me send you his info. Like by you having that connection, you may not have the most personal connection. He's not part of your core 4 where you texting him on a daily basis. But by you having that connection, it's going to add value to your clients and to make you increase your sales. And then the last layer of your inner circle is what I like to call the agent allies, which is a lot of people don't intentionally try to grow their network of agents, and understanding that, the better relationship you have with the better the relationship you have with agents in the area that you're selling, the more likelihood they're going to send you deals before they list them. Like I get texts all the time like, hey man, I'm about to list this property. You got a buyer for me? Because people just want to deal with me because we have a good relationship before they open it up to the network and try to sell it to some unknown agent out there. So the better you can network and have a relationship with agents in your area, maybe it's a little bit more difficult if you're in like a very large metro, but I found at least in the Panhandle, it's a large enough area that there's a lot of agents. At the same time, it's small enough that you start to learn to, you start to get to know everyone, at least the agents that are active out there. Building an agent ally network really helps, especially with an EXP. The friendlier you are with agents, the better they realize you're a good human being and they see your success. They're going to want to be attracted to you, hopefully, and then you can start to grow your downline. And every one of you will have your own team. Like, Kobe's already done a fantastic job of growing his own team under Charlie, right? And so hopefully every one of you can then do the same, where each of you have 20, 40, 50, 100, 3,000 agents under you that now you're reaping the benefits of growing relationships intentionally. That finally brings us to the investing triad. So again, we built the foundation of mindset. We got the education. We started networking. We added value to those people we're networking. We're focusing on the right thing of relationships over profits. And now we've built our inner circle. Now let's figure out how to actually execute and start investing. The investing triad is basically 3 different levers. Let me see. Do I have it here? It's a super simple picture, but I like it. And so this is what I like to call the investing triad. So the investing triad is, just think of it like 3 different things. If you're trying to get into investing, or if you're an agent helping investors, I'm a big fan of the KISS method, right? Keep it simple, stupid, right? So if they say, hey man, I'm having a problem with some sort of investment, I put whatever that problem is into one of these buckets, whether it's knowledge, whether it's time, or whether it's money. And I want you to realize, you personally, if you're trying to invest, you only need 2 out of the 3 of these things. And your clients are the same way. They only need 2 out of the 3. And so if someone's like, man, I would love to invest. I used to flip back in the day and I got the cash right now, but I just don't have the time. I think that's great. You can always find somebody to fill in that 3rd gap through partnership or through some other means, right? So if they don't have the money or the time, or the money or the knowledge, I guarantee you somebody is out there ready to hustle, earn some sweat equity, and help them out with a deal. I get messages all the time of new investors who are like, dude, how can I help you out? I'm willing to work for free. I'm looking for sweat equity. Like all the time, there are people out there looking to work because all they have is time. They don't have money. They might not have knowledge, but they have time to spend. And so you can fill that gap. At the same time, if you have knowledge and you have time, but you don't have the money. So let's say, hey man, I totally understand how to flip a house and I got the time to make it happen, but I don't got the cash. And people tell me this all the time. Well, I'd love to make that happen, but I just don't have the money. Or I found a killer deal, but I can't make it happen. I don't have the money. That tells me 2 things. One of 2 things. It means it's either not a killer deal, because if it was, that you could find the money. I guarantee if it's truly a killer deal, you can find the money. Money is still abundant out there. Times aren't as good as it was 2 years ago when government was literally just giving everyone checks in the mailbox. But times are still pretty good out there where cash is still pretty abundant. So if you come across a killer deal, I can almost guarantee you I can find you the money to make that deal happen. And the same is true if you have money and you have time, but you don't have the knowledge, man, that's where you can leverage things like syndications, if you want to just leverage somebody else's knowledge. Or if you truly have the time and the money, then take the time, spend the money, and learn whatever it is you're trying to learn. And so this is my simple way of understanding the investing triad. Again, I have an entire different lesson on how to leverage it and being smart with it, but we can talk on that a little bit more later. Dang it, I think I just closed it out. I knew that was going to happen. Do you guys know the hotkey to bring back a tab? My daughter always tells me this one, but I always forget what it is. All right, cool. We talked about that. Investing triad. Talked about that. All right, so from here, it's finally time to strut your stuff. So if you're at the point where you just started your career, you're trying to get the sales, you're trying to get into investing, you have the mindset, you have the education, you started networking, you started adding value, you focus on relationships, you started building your core 4, your inner circle. You understand how to leverage within real estate now, understanding time and money and knowledge. Now it's time to finally take action. The whole concept of being both an investor and an agent is that it can totally start to build momentum, right? Momentum in this real estate game is truly a thing. The more activity you have as an agent and the more activity you have as an investor, people want to talk to you more. People want to deal with you more because they just see that you're on fire. They see this momentum coming and it just builds on itself. So if you have a sale, you crush a sale, you advertise that sale, you have an investment, you start to, advertise that investment, you market it within your sphere, the more people like start to send you deals. It's like this weird phenomenon. It's like, oh, hey man, I saw you flip this house. My mom down the street, she wants to sell and she's like really struggling. She doesn't want to deal with an investor. She doesn't want to deal with an agent. Like, would you consider buying her house? Like, yes, I would. Like, things just start like coming to you because this concept of momentum within the space. And so just expect that to happen as you start to build this momentum. I see a lot of people like that. What they'll do, they'll build up a little momentum and then they'll stop doing the things they need to do. They'll stop marketing and they start to, what I like to say, they ride this roller coaster of real estate. So they'll have like, hey man, I was doing all these things for lead generation. It was great. I got 5 deals under contract. I'm like, dude, that's awesome. I love it. And then all of a sudden they'll give me a call a month later, like, man, I sold those 5 houses and I got nothing in my pipeline. Like, what were you doing the past 30 days? Well, I was working these 5 deals. I'm like, that's great, but weren't you continuing to do the things that were bringing you those 5 deals? Oh, well, I was getting busy. And so, I also, I wanted to spend a little time with family. I wasn't going to do this. I'm like, that's great. But, you got to understand you have to continue this momentum. Otherwise, it's like pushing a boulder as hard as you can to finally get it to move, watching the boulder stop, and then being, all right, I need to go walk up to this boulder again and push it again. And like, you're not helping yourself out with this lack of momentum. So just realize momentum is truly a thing in this game, both investments and sales. And if you're in both spaces, they totally build on each other. Just understand that. I love the whole concept there. All right. And as you engage personally with your investment sales, you're going to start to really refine the skills that are required to be a better agent. So when you start, for instance, negotiating on behalf of your own money, so all of a sudden Joseph is buying a property for his own name versus his client. Now, like that changes things a little bit. That negotiation where before you're like, oh, dude, it's close enough. It's a $5,000 difference. Now you're like, well, that's $5,000 of my money. I actually want to negotiate a little bit harder this time. And so you're going to refine your skills a little bit more when you're acting on your own behalf. And so next time you're dealing with a client, you can both empathize with them because you can put yourself in their shoes. And at the same time, these skills you're developing, doing it on your own behalf, are going to help benefit your clients on the backside as well. It's also going to help as you start to stretch your stuff and jump into the real estate space. You really need to learn to be what I call creative agenting. You need to learn that as many creative aspects as you can of making deals happen. And for the sake of time, I'm not going to go too in the weeds here because I have an entirely different lesson on that. And then as you're doing it, showcase what you got going on. Like I said, market the wins you have as investments, market the wins you have in sales. And again, it's just going to help build that momentum more and more. All right. Now, as you're finally executing in the space and you kind of got your stuff going, just realize you're going to get to a point where you're going to have problems. And so one of the concepts that I love is the whole concept of pathways thinking. And pathways thinking is simply the understanding that going from point A to point B, there might be a path. There might be that line from A to B. But what if that path doesn't work, right? So it's trying to figure out how many paths that I can figure out to get to the same endpoint. And so it's just really, it's contingency planning is what it is when it comes down to. This is going to come down to experience and really leveraging people of experience, if you don't have the experience yet, of asking those what if questions. Like, what if this happens? How do I react to that? And how can I preempt that from happening? And if I can't preempt it and it does happen, how do I react to it? And what are my options when it happens, right? So, there's a million ways to go to a million examples I can offer of things that go wrong in a deal, right? We could talk all day long on things that go wrong in a deal. What if, the buyer dies or the seller dies in the middle of transaction? How do I react? What if there's a cloud on title? What if we find there's a roof leak? What if, there's a dead body behind the wall? What do we do on these scenarios, right? So you can just kind of talk through these different things. The other concept of pathways thinking is situational awareness. You need to understand that as a new agent, almost every new agent I've ever dealt with, their first deal is like the worst deal in the world. Like, oh my gosh, so many things went wrong. My first deal, you won't believe how many things went wrong. It was terrible. And there's a trend, there's a reason your first deal generally goes wrong. It's because you don't know what the hell you're doing, right? Your situational awareness, your bubble of awareness is basically like right here. You got a little bubble that you can understand. And as you gain experience, that situational awareness bubble is going to grow and grow and grow outside of just you to maybe you and your client, and then you and your client and the other agent, you and your client and then the title agent, you and your client and the lender. And then all of a sudden, now you have this awareness because of your experience of the entire deal. You have that 30,000-foot view that you can then make decisions off of, right? And so just realize focusing on understanding that concept early is going to help you as you kind of as you grow. Expectation management, we kind of talked about that. I'm not going to get into OODA loop right now, but I love talking about it just for the sake of time. I won't jump into the OODA loop when it comes to pathways thinking. All right. The last part when it comes to my whole concept of supersonic real estate is really, it kind of comes back full circle, going back to mindset. And it's the whole concept of what I call unbalancing your life. And unbalancing your life, what I mean by this is if you truly are transitioning from a different career into real estate, you need to have that hard discussion of intentionally putting this career in front of everything else. If you really want to make this a successful, sustainable, long-term career, you need to jump in feet first. Whenever I made this decision as we were leaving the military to jump into real estate, I sat down with my wife and kids. I was like, hey guys, like, I know I worked a lot in the military. We worked 10, 12, 14-hour days if needed. That's not going to get any better right now. Or if anything, it might get a little worse for you right now. Just realize I need to prioritize my career right now in the expectation that give me a year or two or maybe 3, and then we can start to balance life out a little bit. But up front, I need to intentionally imbalance my life. The way I kind of relate it is, if I'm taking off in a jet, I could maybe take off if I go mid-range on power, right? I go half power, but most likely at the end of the runway, I'm just going to crash because I don't have enough speed to get airborne because I don't have enough power. I could, what most airliners will do, right? They'll go full power. Well, sometimes they won't even go full power, but they'll go enough power to take off. Go full power, what we call mil power in the Air Force, and you take off. You have a nice steady climb, and you'll eventually get to the altitude you're getting to, but it's going to take a while to level off there. What I always like to do as a fighter pilot, I went beyond full power. We went to full afterburner, right? So afterburners, basically what they do is you go full power on the engine, and all they do on the back of the engine, you just flood the exhaust basically with gasoline. Effectively is what it is. It's just like brute force combustion. And that's the way I like taking off, because you get the kick in the pants, you go to take off, and rather than like this slow climb, you accelerate and then you just go up, right? You just go up to your altitude and then you level up. Now, I can't maintain afterburner for a long time. You can hurt the engine, you can have overheat, you can have other issues. You can even overspeed the plane. However, I'm going to get to altitude quicker, knowing that's the case. So it's a trade-off for me as a pilot that I'm going to intentionally kind of push the limits of the plane to get to where I want to go. Because once I'm at altitude, I pull back the throttles and I enjoy the ride from there. And it's kind of the same thing here, guys. If you want to jump into this and make this a full-time sustainable career, you need to have that hard discussion of, am I willing to sacrifice right now in order to make this a full-time thing? Am I willing to unbalance my life towards my career right now, knowing it's a temporary thing? Realize there's this whole concept of law of diminishing intent as well. A lot of people jump into real estate. They're like, this is it. My name's Kobe. I'm a killer. I'm going to do this. Let's go. And then like Kobe's like, all right, what I'm going to do? I'm going to do this. I'm going to make 5 phone calls every half an hour for 4 hours a day. It's my thing. I got this thing. It's going to be awesome. And maybe you have this intention of doing it, but the whole law of diminishing intent is the longer you wait before you do something, the likelihood of you doing it diminishes drastically. If you say, hey man, I'm gonna eat super healthy tomorrow, no, okay, and then tomorrow comes and you're like, oh, tomorrow's gonna happen. And eventually you just stop having that conversation with yourself because you're not actually taking action right away. So this happens when you're dealing with investors. If an investor's like, hey man, I really like to buy a short-term rental in Destin, you're like, great, awesome. Let me send you some properties right now, because I know if I don't send you properties right now, the likelihood of you taking action in 24 hours or in a half an hour or in 2 hours is going to be far less than right now. So I'm going to stop what I'm doing. I'm going to interrupt my life, and I'm going to do everything I can to get them data right now so we can take action. And the same thing applies to you guys in your career. Like, you need to learn to take action now, because you can talk about tomorrow until you're blue in the face, but tomorrow's never going to come. So just take action today.
Oh man, I hope you got as much out of that as I did. Amazing, amazing. Matt is an awesome dude. If you want to partner with the both of us, as well as some other heavy hitter, amazing real estate producers and team leaders that are going to help you grow your business and achieve financial freedom along the way, be sure to check out that link below, and we'd love to chat with you. Have a great day.